Okay, let's try again. We had some technical problems here. So hello and welcome all to the EC2U forum live from Turku, Finland. Okay, we are all around Europe live right now. I'm quite sad that we couldn't be physically here in Turku, but it's nice to see you all there online, all around Europe. My name is Tiia Enges. I work here at the University of Turku as the head of student support services, and I'm honored to be the host today in this webinar and panel discussion where we talk about social sustainability. That is very important and interesting topic always, but especially now during this second pandemic year that we are living all around the world. The pandemic has affected our lives many ways, and also our work and studies in our universities, and that is something that we are going to talk about today. Before I will introduce you to our keynote speakers, I will introduce you first to my colleague, Mr. Lassi Yli-Muilu, who is working as an international officer here at the University of Turku. And Lassi is today our chat moderator because I'm not able to see our chat. Hello, Lassi, can you hear me?
I can hear you well. Welcome all to this forum. Like Tiia said, my name is Lassi. I work as an international officer at the University of Turku, and I'll be your chat moderator today. Today we have both a Q&A box and a chat box. So please use the Q&A box to enter your questions. After each presentation, we'll have some time to take questions from the audience. So please don't hesitate to post any questions, any comments you have related to the previous speaker. And you can post questions throughout the session. And if you wish to discuss anything with other participants, you're welcome to use the chat box as well. But after each presentation, we'll take some questions from the Q&A box.
Thank you, Lassi. So Lassi will check the both boxes and help me pick some questions and comments to the discussion. And then some more practicalities. To start with, your microphones have been muted by the technical support, and you can keep your cameras off during this webinar. Our keynote speakers, please keep your cameras and microphones open only when you are presenting, and also in the end if we have time for questions from the audience. Also online we have a great talented artist, Blanche Ellis, with us, and she illustrates what the speakers are saying. And you will be able to see her drawings after this forum on the EC2U website and in our social media posts. And of course, what would be an event today without an own hashtag? We have our hashtag EC2U Forum 2021, and I want to encourage you to use that on your posts in Instagram and in Twitter, and share your photos, for example, of your EC2U Forum studios in your locations, in your universities or at home, wherever you are. So please use hashtag EC2U Forum 2021 when you are active on social media during our forum. And our organizers wanted me to remind you that if you find some interesting webinars or panels in the program that you haven't signed up for, there are no worries. You can sign up to any of the events in the Live2 platform just by clicking on the event title so that you won't miss anything interesting. But now, without further ado, I will introduce you to our first keynote speaker, Professor Karina Weichhold, and she comes from the University of Jena, Germany, where she works as the leader of the Department of Youth Research and Institute of Psychology, and as the Dean of Study Affairs at the Faculty of Social and Behavioral Sciences at the University of Jena. Professor Weichhold is also the coordinator of the course of studies leading to the BA degree in psychology at the University of Jena. And in her research, Professor Weichhold is focusing on psychosocial adaptation under a lifespan perspective, following a biopsychosocial and culturally sensitive research program paradigm with an explicit focus on the application of findings to intervention and social policy, especially during the developmental periods of puberty and adolescence. Her topic today is consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic for young people's mental health. So hello, Karina. Professor Weichhold, are you online and can you hear us?
Yes, hello. Thank you very much for this very kind invitation and also introduction. And so I'm really happy to take part into that forum today. And yes, hopefully you are interested in what I want to say about the consequences of the pandemic for young people's mental health. And I summarized a little bit of research on that topic, and my aim was also to apply all these findings with regard to prevention intervention, because of course, if we study a phenomenon in particular under a crisis situation, there may be also really interesting implications for helping people getting personally out of the crisis too. So I don't know how you managed that. I sent my presentation in advance, right? And
yes, they are just checking.
Yeah.
Just one moment, please.
Mm-hmm.
Just one moment.
Mm-hmm.
I will, when we're looking for the slides, I will remind all our participants to be active there on the chat and the question and ask box, and then Lassi, our chat moderator, will check those questions and comments, and we'll tell those to us after the presentation of Professor Weichhold. So I believe that now you can see the slides of Professor Weichhold. So please, I will give you the turn to you.
Okay, so I just want to clarify this in advance. How do you change the slides? Just when I say change the slide, or shall I can also bring up my presentation and I can...
Okay. So our technical support will change the slides when you say so.
Okay.
Okay.
Good. So thank you very much again for this kind invitation, also introduction, and I'm happy to be a speaker in the EC TU forum, and I hope this presentation will shed a bit of a light on the difficult situation, in particular for young people, and I keep an explicit focus on students. So not only that I have in my day-to-day interactions during, for instance, Zoom meetings with my students, of course, experiences how young people, how our students feel in the current situation. I would also present some of the data on that issue that are already available on young people. So when I talk about young people, next slide, please, it's important, first of all, to think about what young people usually go through in this life period. So I'm talking about, let's say, the end of the second decade of life, beginning of third decade of life. So maybe age 18 to age 25. And this is the typical age of students at a university or college. And so first of all, we have to think about in what period are they normatively, so without any crisis situation. Next slide, please. And if we think about this, this is an age group, you can say end of adolescence, begin of adulthood, or you could also say it's a phase of the so-called emerging adulthood. It's definitely still a time where young people try to explore and also form their identity. They are still not really clear about who they are and where they will go in the future. It's still everything in a trying out position. So they try to have lots of contacts. They try to have new friendships. They try to explore different lifestyles. It's definitely still a phase where they restructure their relationships within family and also peer relations. Usually normatively, they are getting a bit more distant from the family, from the parents, and they have more intense relationships with their peers, form romantic relationships, and they try to find out still, how do I want to live? So it's not surprising that young people in late adolescence or at the beginning of adulthood are very strongly depending on their freedom. They want to explore, they have a quite hedonistic lifestyle. And it's not a surprise that this life phase is normatively and usually the life phase where they show highest risk behavior. Risk behavior, for instance, in the way that we have highest rate on substance use, drug using behavior, and so on. In this life phase, mostly it's just exploring different and new experiences. But it's also a life phase where the academic and occupational goals are formed and individuals strive for. Also, if we talk about development in context in this kind of life phase, it's important to note that although, for instance, our students look adult and we think they are adult, there are still massive biological restructuring ongoing. For instance, this concerns the brain, the central nervous system. And this is at least up to the age of 25 that we have a massive restructuring within the brain that is affecting the ability to self-regulate the own behavior and own strong emotions. That means young people have still problems to struggle to structure themselves, to regulate their behavior, and to regulate also strong emotions like fear or anger, or also very positive emotions. In the same vein, because we think already they are adult, they can manage their lives by themselves. Parents also do think in that direction, but also teachers. In this life phase, usually somebody receives relatively low external support. So parents think, yeah, the child can go along. It's now 20 years of age, and everything can be done by the young person themselves. But in fact, there are some capacities that are not fully developed even in the age 20. Next slide, please. So on top of what I just told, so this is the normative development in this life phase. Of course, also young people experience the worldwide consequences of the COVID pandemic themselves. So we have, of course, general consequences that were introduced by many countries to combat the further spread of the virus, but it's also the personal threat by death and illness that could happen to me, could happen to my family members due to a COVID-19 infection. But it's also that young people were also locked down in the own flat, in the own house, had to adhere to social distancing rules and so on. So this is what basically affected everyone, not just specifically young people, but the young people, and as I said, I focus in particular on students, of course, experienced that their institutions, their universities had to switch to online teaching and learning. And so the campus as a place where teachers, students, peers, and so on come together, and where you can form relationships, maybe important networking and alliances, is almost not existing from one day to the next day, and for a quite long time since now. And of course, many students also lost their jobs, and also options for international mobility became very limited to non-existent. And so these were consequences that are particularly true for the students, and students had to struggle with during the past year and a little bit more in many places around the world. And next slide, please. And the question is, of course, what are the consequences? What are the individual effects of this crisis and the circumstances around them on students and their lives? And this is what I want to focus on in the first part of my presentation. I would like to give you some examples from empirical studies Next slide, please. That were conducted until now in many parts around the world. I start with a European study involving many countries and samples from countries, but I also will give you some examples of research from the US and from South Africa. Next slide, please. So when we talk about the adaptation of psychosocial adaptation and health of young people in that age phase, so at the beginning of the 20s, let's say, of course, the education situation changed a lot. We have not everyone around the world or in Europe provided with options to participate in digital teaching. We have 13% of young people that report to have no access to courses anymore, no access to teaching or training. And this situation is in particular acute among youth that come from lower income countries or regions that have not a proper digital access. So basically, we think that we deliver now virtually, or we can adhere to everyone virtually, but this is not true for everyone around the world. I know that Finland is very advanced in that regard, and many other countries in Europe too, Germany also. But we always have a small proportion of young people that were not able to connect with others, were not able to get into courses, or maybe also institutions were not able to offer for young people continuous education over the time of the pandemic. So 65% of young people reported having learned less since the pandemic began, and this is, I think, a very strong number that we have here, and 51% believe their education will be delayed, or even 9% fear that their education would suffer or might even fail. So there are strong concerns of young people in the current situation that their education may have taken a wrong road. Next slide, please. If we focus on social interactions, of course, also students report dramatic changes in their social interactions, in particular when there is a lack of the physical support from peers, hugging each other, giving emotional support, just having the face-to-face interaction, also with lectures. If this is not existent anymore, although we have these virtual meetings, it's difficult for young people, and this is what they report, that they are not staying motivated anymore, and that they have really problems to focus themselves on actually doing their coursework, for instance, when they have to learn in a remote space. And also, as I said, technical connectivity and equipment is an issue for some individuals, and if this is really there, if there are really problems with internet connectivity, for instance, then the only option to socially interact during a lockdown situation is actually not an option for everyone. So some still have to struggle even to get, to the window of internet that is giving some hope during the pandemic for young people. And what research also indicates is that females may react with even more severe problems because they are much more dependent on social interactions and on caring and supportive relationships with others to maintain their positive mindset and their mental health than males do. So what we see also when we look at the data is that particular females react with depression or anxiety or stress during the situation of the pandemic. And in particular, this is true also for the younger females because they depend even more heavily on these positive social interactions with others as compared to males. Next slide, please. Of course, and I said this earlier, it's clear that many students also lost their jobs, and as a consequence, a lot of students report that they have experienced financial setbacks due to the COVID-19 pandemics, and they cannot work, they can maybe not afford to study anymore, so it has severe consequences also on a structural basis, but also on the everyday life. Many students are really challenged to maintain their daily routines. There is no student job, there is no lecture where I have to go, so many of the students report that the day shifted completely. They sleep very long, stay for very long hours in bed, and are really challenged to have a typical structure. And this is difficult for the situation that we have now here, because we don't have an external timer that tells us what to do when during the day. It's also a phenomenon that we observe when somebody gets unemployed. So long-term unemployment has the same kind of effect on daily routines. And for most students, what they report is that the only interaction partners that they get along or that they have contact with on a regular basis are their parents. 20% at least, and this is, I would say, a very positive estimation from a large US American sample, say that their mental health has worsened. And in the same way, 55% of the students do not know where to turn for help to improve their mental health. What you can read in the newspapers, at least in Germany, but I think in many places around the world too, with really dramatic problems also to offer, for instance, in a psychiatry, help in acute mental health situation, or we have problems to offer counseling by a psychologist. And this seems to be in particular important also for young people that often are not really the core of discussion when we talk about the consequences of the pandemic on mental health. Next slide, please.
At this point, Karina, I will remind you that there is about 1 minute time left before the discussion.
Okay, so I try to be quick. So we have some examples of interviews. Next slide, please, which I will just shortly read. One student said, in the beginning of the pandemic, I felt claustrophobic. I was like, I can't be in this house for this long. This is going to drive me crazy. Next slide, please. Often I spend days at a time without leaving my house. My sleep schedule gets thrown off, and slowly I begin to get depressed. It's been tough. This was far from a typical fun and exciting freshman year. It's one of the most us will be happy to move forward from. And so it's something like a scissor effect that we can observe in the data. Next slide, please. We have certain groups of students, of young people that are most affected regarding their mental health during the pandemic, in particular those that had pre-existing psychological problems, that had low resources in their personal and social environment, also students that are just making the transition from school to work or from university to work, that are younger, that are female, or that come from disadvantaged background. They have much more problems to get positively through the time of the pandemic. Next slide, please. So the final question I want to raise is, what can we learn for intervention from what we have seen in the empirical data so far? Next slide, please. So on the personal and contextual level, proximal context like family and peers, it's important that young people learn to talk about their problems and that they actively search for help and new resources for support to better get through this time. Maybe they participate in web-based sports activities, or go outside, or they find a hobby, or they focus on what they can control during a lockdown situation, like sleep, nutrition, and exercise, and they would profit from it on a personal level. Next slide, please. But also on the organization level, definitely a university, for instance, has to offer to compensate for disadvantages, to give structural help, but also to show empathy regarding the stressful situation, to provide also technical equipment, and also maybe try to offer options for young people to participate, for instance, assisting a chat or telephone hotline to have some source of positive stimulation. Next slide, please. But whatever things you try to install, for instance, at a university to support students during the pandemic, it's always important to think about the possible long-term effects, because until now we do not know much about it, and there will be many problems that sustain even after the crisis ends. And so the plea is definitely to implement long-term strategies to compensate for the negative consequences on mental health for young people. Next slide. Thank you very much for your attention, and I would be happy to answer your questions.
Thank you, Professor Weichhold. And now I will turn to our chat moderator, Lassi. We have time for at least one short question. I can see red dots there.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we do have one question on the Q&A box. So Ivana from Charles University in Prague poses the question: do you think there are differences between countries in COVID lockdown experiencing between the students there? For instance, in Finland, there are a lot of students studying in a remote way anyway, mostly universities of applied sciences. So do you think that makes a big difference?
I think there will be, between the countries and between the different habits also to interact and to teach, there will be many differences. If you have, let's say, a country where they're not so, where they really rely on the face-to-face interaction during the teaching process, of course, it's much more difficult because everyone is basically unprepared to use from one day to the other day everything in digitalized way. This is more problematic. They have to install, for instance, Zoom. They have to get along with these new technologies, and they have to search for specific providers for specific techniques. If this is something that is belonging already to the teaching portfolio or the methods that the university is already using since years, yeah, then it's of course a bit more easy to switch the teaching format, but also maybe to interact between the students also without the face-to-face interaction. Yes, so I would say there are differences.
Thank you, Karina. Thank you, Lassi, for the question. Now we will turn to our second keynote speaker, Professor Gabriella Bottini from the University of Pavia from Italy. Professor Bottini teaches cognitive neuroscience at the University of Pavia, and she is delegated with responsibility for areas concerning the university's third mission activities. Her topics of research are the body representation in the healthy and damaged brain and the intersection between neuroscience, ethics, law, and art. The title of her presentation today is BENESSERE, Third Mission and Public Engagement as Conceptualized by the University of Pavia. Hello, Professor Bottini, can you hear us?
Yes, of course I can, and I'm waiting. You invite me to share the screen. Okay,
welcome.
Thank you. First of all, I would like, of course, to say thank you. I'm very excited of your invitation and to be here in such an interesting and, I repeat, exciting network. So yes, I'm waiting for
presentation.
I'm waiting. You allow me to share the screen.
To share the screen.
Yeah.
Professor Bottini's slides.
No, not yet.
Just one moment.
Unless, okay, yes, I think that well, wonderful. Thank you so much. So thank you again. And well, what I would like to do today is to present you our model, which is modello benessere in Italian, well-being model, that we have created in order to create a sort of network concerning, in particular, third mission and public engagement. And I would like to conceptualize a bit with you on this. Well, it seems I'm not able to go to the second one.
We will do that for you.
Ah, okay. Okay, thank you so much. So let's go to the second slide, please. Well, this is a special year for the for our university, because 2021 is a very special year for because it is her 660th anniversary. So it's a good level of competition with other universities such as Oxford, Padova, and Bologna, and others in the world. And we have a good connection with all these universities. The next, please. Thank you.
The next one.
Well, first of all, due to the title of this session in particular of the forum, I would like to say that the principal objective of our well-being model is to get into the frame of sustainability. And in particular, what are we trying to do is to organize a big macro project into the framed into the 17 goals for sustainable development. Of course, as you can understand, we are not getting to each topic of these 17 goals, but you will see that most of the projects concerning third mission and public engagement promoted by Pavia and also the territory surrounding Pavia are focused on the main topic of this program. The next, please. Well, and I would also like to say that our university has already an office for sustainable actions, and this is in accordance with the path pursued by the best international universities. So there is already an international framework in which the University of Pavia is trying to be is trying to operate in accordance with other universities and in agreement also to common projects on these 17 goals. So there is already a working group on sustainability with a lot of young students coming from the different fields represented by our university, trying to construct a real model on best practices that are listed at the end of this slide. The next, please. And those are just a couple of examples of projects that are going on in our university. In particular, the project Agili ad Agio is focused on the administrative people working in our university, and it concerns a new, let's say, it's focused on program, a motor program, and also alimentary program in order to improve life of people working into the university. And the other one, Meditiamo Insieme, it's again a program strictly related to the aspects of well-being, which is directed in particular to the students, but due to the success of this project, we are also extending this to the family of the students and also to other people working in the university or related to the university from the territory. And it is a program of meditation and mindfulness. Okay, the next. And as you can see, we have already almost 300 people involved in this project. Now, in general, just to present you the Pavia University, this university is an ideal environment to implement our well-being model that, as you can understand, is a very extended one because, of course, everyone is interested in the general and collective well-being and, of course, the personal well-being. And this university is a small academy and a small academic town that gets the number of students, of course, with a prestigious history. And the academic disciplines are largely represented, ranging from the humanities, science, humanistic sciences, and also any kind of science, such as, for example, economics or mathematics and physics. So it's a very rich interdisciplinary environment. And also Pavia's territory is extensively developed from the agriculture point of view, and we produce, for example, a number of different kinds of rice, for example, and has an extraordinary cultural patrimony. And as you can see here, for example, this is one of the oldest bridges of Pavia, joining the two sides of the river. And we assume that this could be a very nice symbol of the bridge between the university and the academy, and in general, the territory surrounding Pavia. The next, please. So one of the most attractive features of our university, such as other, like, for example, Oxford and Cambridge, just to name a couple of them, is an extensive network of prestigious colleges. Some of them are very historical, and amongst them, I would like to mention in particular the Castiglioni College, that offers to female students academic studies. Now, it's interesting because, of course, in particular, this college is also together with the Santa Caterina, because also the Santa Caterina has a part which is devoted to women in particular, is also promoting a particular cultural events related to the condition of the women in society. And of course, this college, the characteristic of the Pavia colleges is that they are developing a community which is increasingly becoming multi-ethnic. And this network organizes several cultural events. And as you can understand, these became extremely important, in particular in this particular period due to the pandemics, because of course, this network was a key of openness to the territory, while the students were obliged, of course, to respect the rules of isolation due to the pandemic. Do not forget that Codogno, which is the Italian place where everything started concerning the pandemic, is very close to Pavia. And I remember very well that the day before everything was closed, I was with a number of PhD students coming from Codogno with their family for the presentation of their final thesis. So it was quite a dramatic moment. The next slide, please. Well, now what I would like to present to you is what has our model accomplished so far. So the first point is looking at, at the third mission and the main responsibility of the topic of public engagement in order to reinforce the link to the territory, because this is the main problem. We ask it to be part of and also obtain admission to the work panel of the local public health. Well, the local public health, it's very important also because there is a strong link with the all public health issues concerning also the territory surrounding Milan, because there is a strong collaboration between Milan and Pavia. And this panel allows us to promote and contribute to a number of projects on different issues concerning human well-being, as you can see here. And then, of course, we have initiative and events concerning well-being, really physical well-being. So we had different events which was open to the public in the territory, like for example, the prevention of ictus, but also, and then of course, many meetings concerning the problem of the pandemics, explaining all the characteristics of the coronavirus and then the old pathologies related to these viruses. And then also interesting cultural event related to music and art in general, such as, for example, those that guest Paolo Fresu, who is a very famous musician, jazz musician, very famous in the world because he is promoting a lot of social events in this field. The next slide, please. Well, due to the pandemics, we were particularly active, and I really enjoy, and I thank you, Karina, for her wonderful presentation concerning adolescents in particular. We implemented a number of projects to support healthcare professionals, university students, and their family in this dramatic moment. And I have to say, I think it's interesting to mention that these services are still active. And I thank again Karina to have mentioned the problem to the follow-up of these people, because of course there is an acute problem, but they are going to have also problem in the long follow-up. And we are also performing scientific studies concerning the cognitive and behavioral emotional impairments of patients who were admitted in our hospitals in Milan and in Pavia because a severe infection by the virus. The next slide, please. We quite recently, and this concern in particular the activities of our academy in the field of art, but also in medicine, you will see. We formalize our collaboration with the Medicinema Association. This association is very famous because this association promotes the constructions of cinemas into the hospital and in general also in any kind of care institutes. And these make strong the link of the heart and also people, caregivers or patients who has difficulties to be close to arts in the territories. And I mean, this association is dedicated to patients and their families in particular. And we are implementing a number of projects focused on the humanization of care. We are also creating a master which is devoted to the special language that we have to adopt when we are discussing the topic of humanization of care. And for example, in particular, what we are performing now is a project that didn't stop even during pandemics, which is the projections of special film in order to control emotion of caregivers of patients with mental deterioration. The next slide, please. Well, this is a very nice initiative in Pavia, which is the Officine Creative. This is a creator, I have to say, of the artistic students of Pavia. And in fact, we have a special university course which is devoted to art. And the Officine Creative is an artistic production lab promoting cultural and social projects and actions linking the university and the territory. And you know, those students in particular, they work very much during the pandemic because they create a particular platforms with projects related to the problem of isolation during pandemics. The next slide. And again, you probably know that we also have a very famous musicology institute in Cremona. And yeah, if I say just one word, Stradivari, you immediately understand the historical importance of this institute, which is connected with our university. And as you can see, we have a lot of initiatives which is very linked with the territory, and in particular with areas of population that have particular problem and we are collaborating, for example, with the Caritas, that is promoting a reception home in Cremona, and then also we are also related to the territory and all the richness that this territory is offering to in general to the population. We have a Casa dell'Accoglienza in particular for people coming from abroad in order also to develop their own cultures on the territory of Cremona. And also, the next please, we have had a special exhibition trying to join the different cultures, such as, for example, in this multi-ethnic initiative that is still keep going in Cremona. The next slide, please.
At this point, I will remind you about our time.
Okay. And this is, we have a Neuroscience and Society Lab that is promoting this initiative, in particular in the field of neuroscience communication. Okay, the next. Well, and of course, you know, the third mission and the public engagement should also provide new hints to favor the diffusion of lifelong education. So this is a special focus of attention of our initiatives. The next slide, please. Okay, and then of course we want to work in a special, in a more national and international network. This is why we are represented in this national academic third mission public engagement network. The next slide. And finally, last but not least, our participation to the AC2U project represents our engagement to concretely promote responsible research and innovation. The next slide. We also need, and this is, the final point that concerns the future, but it's starting to become a reality. The future is the promotion of the Parco Girolamo Cardano for sustainable innovation and the science district that are very close into the territory of Pavia. And this is the future project that is creating a research center where the academic resources will operate in synergy with the enterprises. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Professor Bottini. And now to Lassi again. I can see that there are our participants are chatting. Is there something that you want to highlight to all of us?
Well, there are no particular questions on the Q&A box, but on the chat there's some discussion of how we need to keep on supporting people and whole communities also after the pandemic starts to weaken, because the effects of the pandemic might be long-term and they might manifest only with a delay. So this kind of approach is quite necessary.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So now I think it's time for our last, but of course not the least, keynote speaker. And she comes from Romania, Associate Professor Daniela Muntele. She works as an Associate Professor at the Faculty of Psychology and Educational Sciences of Alexandru Cuza University of Iasi, Romania, with a doctoral thesis on the subjective state of well-being. She teaches disciplines related to health psychology and psychotherapy and coordinates student activities and projects. Her research interests are related to well-being and health behaviors. Daniela Muntele's topic today is students' peer-to-peer psychological support in times of health crisis. So can you hear us, Daniela? Welcome.
Thank you very much. First of all, I want to say hello to everyone here in this nice meeting, very well organized. I'm happy to have the honor to be a participant in this forum. It is not a simple mission for me to present my slides immediately after Professor Karina Weichold and Gabriella Bottini, who have already brought up very interesting ideas and very pleasant to listen to. I will ask you to permit me to share myself my PDF, if it is possible, because
it should be possible.
Yes, it is the last edition that
now we can see them. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Immediately. My presentation will briefly introduce you to the activity of our master students in their clinical internship. This activity was actually enriched after the COVID-19 pandemic began. You will see how. Right from the beginning of the state of emergency, Alexandru and Cuza University, our university, paid special attention to students away from their family, Romanians away, or foreigners hosted in Iași with the Erasmus scholarship. And the International Relations Service has identified the need to solve the problem at that moment. The aim was to reduce the feeling of isolation and prevent the evolution toward states of excessive anxiety using peer support offered by clinical psychology and psychotherapy master students. Thus, it was proposed to them to carry out the clinical internship in a supervised manner through online supportive dialogues with those Erasmus students who requested it. As you can see, I have a very small plan for this presentation. I set out to address three aspects, which of course I attach increased importance as suggested by the size of the circles associated with each. I will start with a short presentation of the place where I'm affiliated and where the master's degree program, which provide online psychological support, is located. Then I will present short details about the master students who are offering this support. And I will indicate the principles underlying the training of clinical psychologist skills that we can consider relevant in this very formative approach. Later, I will talk about the actual activity of our master students in clinical psychology and psychotherapy. This activity began carried out within the discipline of the curriculum called clinical internship or clinical stages, stagii clinice in Romanian language. Since we are under the umbrella of a project in which the notion of university campus is important, I considered that an image or two images could be welcome. Here is the main building of our university, the oldest construction of Alexandru and Cuza University. It was built in the second half of the 19th century, so not as old as Pavia University, of course, but one of the most old in Eastern Europe and the oldest in our country anyway. Now let me show you the picture of the building of my faculty, Faculty of Psychology and Educational Sciences. This is a D building, we call here A, B, C, D buildings in our university. It also has the inner court, it's very nice. We are here about 55 colleagues working as teaching staff here. Anyway, in this building is located also another faculty named Faculty of Physical Education and Sports, from where, fortunately, many colleagues are hardly involved in this project. You see to you. Here we can see that our faculty has offered has an offer of master study programs that is presented like follows on the website of the faculty. There are 8 master programs, 4 in the field of psychology and 4 in the field of educational sciences. This is a master program named Clinical Psychology and Psychotherapy that we involved in this project. The master had a duration of 4 semesters, 2 years, like all the other masters. And it is one was involved, as I said, in this activity with Erasmus students who requested for psychological support. It's important now to point some ideas about the foundation of this activity. When Bologna process was carried out with the intention of increasing coherence in higher education system in the 48 countries involved, all participant countries agreed to introduce a three-cycle higher education system consisting of bachelor's, master's, and doctoral studies. Next, ensure mutual recognition of qualification and learning periods abroad completed at other university, and agreed to implement a system of quality assurance to strengthen the quality and relevance of learning, quality of and relevance of teaching also. Among the necessary elements for relevance and quality of higher education is the formation of transversal skills, transversal competencies, as United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization indicated. Transversal skills, as probably most of all know, are those typically considered as not specifically related to a particular job, task, academic discipline, or area of knowledge, but as skills that can be used in a wide variety of situations and work settings. These skills are increasingly in high demands for learners to successfully adapt to changes and to lead meaningful and productive lives. The examples are included here: critical and innovative thinking, interpersonal skills, intrapersonal skills, global citizenship, and media and informative literacy, as you can see. Educational scaffolding endorses a high level of support in early stages of training and is linked to greater levels of didactic instruction. As competency develops, the scaffolding is lessened in a developmentally appropriate way, allowing for increased level of experiential learning. So O'Brien, Clark, and Malacuti considered the development of competency in counseling psychology and addressed the tension between traditional didactic methods of instruction and experiential aspects of learning clinical skills. These authors made 7 recommendations around integrating didactic and practical teaching methodologies in an effort to generate lifelong learning and problem-solving skills. Teach declarative knowledge that will enable learners to manage new problems as their competency grows, teach problem-solving methods, support the development of domain-relevant knowledge, and personal motivation to enable learners' ongoing self-study, ensure that internship experiences are available for clinical practice, provide guidance on professional activities that grow expertise, ensure an appropriate context for training, structure training in a developmentally appropriate. The recommendations 4, 5, and 6 are largely followed precisely because of this activity, especially as master students receive permanent guidance for their cases they work with from clinical psychologists, as I said, who conduct clinical internship during the academic semester. In short, the way in which supportive communication between the master students and the requesting beneficiary is reached is outlined here. With the help of an online form, Erasmus students who wanted to request help through supportive dialogues from our master's students turned to International Relations Service in Alexandru and Cuza University. Further, from there, the requests are distributed actually to our master students. Our master students have a weekly clinical internship discipline and I repeat, experienced psychologists, clinical psychologists, perform practical activities with them and provide support, supervision. Therefore, these master students who work with these cases are receiving competent guidance with a formative purpose, and this is very, very, very good for them. For most clinical psychology and psychotherapy master students, this step was loaded with a kind of emotion and in a sort of professional debut in unprecedented conditions. Some of them declaring that they were anxious, others fearing that they would not know how to answer the client's questions, others being insecure about their ability to launch into professional activity without an observer by their side in real time. We have here one of the testimony concerning the overcoming difficulties initially perceived. At first, a student said, I had a feeling of fear. I didn't know exactly how to handle the situation so that the discussion would be as useful as possible for a person who had asked for help, but also for me. After we started forming a relationship, things become more relaxed. With the help of master students, we have already worked on the supportive dialogues with Erasmus students. We obtained a series of answers in a very small survey. You will see here some questions and the main answers. What are the main complaints of students entering the role of client, incoming or outgoing Erasmus students who ask for psychological support? And the main type of answer was this: anxiety, worry about the pandemic, about the situation at home, fatigue, poor sleep, or even exhaustion due to the academic tasks, and loneliness, lack of social activities due to pandemic, and relational dilemmas also. Another question was about positive effects of the supportive dialogues mentioned by the beneficiaries. They mentioned emotional support received. It does matter to be listened and to be understood. They mention the decrease in negative emotions, the increase in ability to react flexibly to external factors. They mentioned that they become less worried in general. And another type of answer was that this supportive dialogues was completing the Erasmus experience in Romania for incoming students. We also asked our master students about their own difficulties encountered in this activity of supporting, of providing support. They mentioned difficulty in understanding another culture. Next, initially uncertainty about the use of learned techniques for psychological intervention. And another idea was about feeling kind of pressure to play a role of specialist.
At this point,
well,
I will remind you also about our time limit.
Well, I'll hurry a bit. Here we have a lot of answer concerning their benefits. I mean, our master students' benefits. I got a new culture and discovered the common substratum of various religions. I have a clear and more complete picture of the effect of isolation in some people. I have gained confidence in my qualities as a counselor. My benefit is that I practice, that I am put in front of situation that helped me grow to be a better psychologist. We have identified the benefits and limitations of the online format of our professional activity, experience feedback received from the beneficiary, own introspection, another benefit mentioned, knowing another culture and increasing my empathy. Many of master students remarked observing practically, directly, the usefulness of techniques learned and possibly previously practiced only through the role play in the group of colleagues. I choose only one of these answers that we are very happy about. Asking open-ended questions, reflecting on emotion and content, reformulating or paraphrasing help the other person become more self-aware. The down arrow technique was one that I used successfully to identify dysfunctional cognitive patterns and to be able to change them later. From narrative therapy, we use outsourcing the problem so that the problem does not remain equal to the whole identity of the person. For me, what mattered most was that the other person felt safe and trusted me, which meant that I was able to create the framework he needed, including online communication. I really felt satisfaction when we see each other again at meetings, and he tells me what he has become aware of. And so we unravel some unknown aspects and move toward achieving the objective. It's really nice, said Georgiana, a student of ours. It is important for us that this line of activity fits very well with the training interest in clinical psychology at the level of master studies. In the end, I consider that this experience is very good for everyone. And the formative value of the clinical internships done with the help of supervision is very satisfying. Both transversal and the professional specific skills are pursued through this peer-to-peer supportive dialogues activity included in the internship of clinical psychology and psychotherapy master students. I will stop here. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Associate Professor Muntele. Lassi, we have time for one question.
Yes, and indeed, we do have one question here on the Q&A box. Ludovic wants to know if you plan to maintain such support even after the pandemic has hopefully ended.
Of course, I think a lot of good things that happened during this pandemic should be maintained after the pandemic will hopefully ended. Thank you for your question. It's very, very important to think about this, actually. Now I don't know how to stop my share screen, you know. I'm not sure I know how to.
Yeah, stop sharing on the...
Stop sharing. Yes. Yes, thank you very much.
You. Okay. Thank you all, to all our keynote speakers, and we will continue this very interesting discussion about these topics on our panel discussion a little bit later. But now I think that we have a little video for you because here in our university, the University of Turku, we have had this project called Pylly ylös, bottoms up, that aims to get the students and the personnel of our university to reduce the time we spend sitting in one place and to actively take breaks from sitting for our own well-being. We have volunteers at the campus who keep regularly small gym sessions for our staff. I have also been part of these sessions. Our Human Resources Development Planning Officer, Ms. Kati Kekäläinen, is one of these volunteers, and she will give us now some tips for getting our bottoms up. So here comes the bottom ups video. Please stand up.
Hello, welcome to Exercise Break. Several studies have shown that sitting too much is harmful for one's health. Luckily, we can reduce the disadvantage of sitting by taking short breaks, stand up, and doing small exercises. Break workout have many benefits. It reduces neck and back problems, it improves circulation and boosts metabolism. It prevents cardiovascular and metabolic diseases. But it also improves stress tolerance and learning ability, as well as boosts memory and thinking skills. So let's do some small exercises to get all of these benefits. These exercises are easy and you don't need a lot of space or stretchy clothes to do these movements. Please get up and take a good position. Close your eyes for a while. Concentrate on your own breathing and let it become slower. Focus on the position you are standing in and check that your toes are pointing forward and your knees are slightly soft. But keep a control in your abs. Roll your shoulders down and relax them. And now you can open your eyes. Now we need a little space on both sides and in front of you. Put your hands behind the lower back, push chest outward and raise chin. Hold your arms out in front of you and lower your head in the same line than your arms. Look at the floor. Then come back and push your chest out again. Then bring your arms in front of you and round your upper back. And repeat this 5 times. Feel the stretching in your chest and shoulders when your hands are in your lower back, and feel stretching in upper back when your arms are in front of you. And feel warm in your muscles. Concentrate on breathing and breathe smoothly. And once more. And now you can lower your hands and roll your shoulders. Stand on one leg. Use the whole foot plate and feel the floor from toes to heel. Control your abs and check that your knee is slightly soft. Start to rotate your other leg all the way from the hip. Roll your wrists at the same time. If you have difficulty balancing, you can take support from a wall or table, but first try to do this without support. Change direction. All the exercises where you need balance are useful because you have to activate your abs while keeping balance. Then change the leg. Find good balance first and start. When you stand on one leg, the mobility exercise for one leg is also strength exercise for the other leg, which is on the floor supporting you. And change direction. It is good to note that it is not only our upper body which needs movement after sitting. Also hips, legs and bottom need workout after sitting so that blood circulates in the muscles better. Bring your other foot to the floor and stand on your both legs, and you can shake your legs a bit. Then last one, and this is for our neck. This is necessary exercise for all of us who are spending a lot of time with the phone or laptop, and our head is often bent forward. That's why we are now doing strength exercise for muscles in front of our neck. Put your head in the neutral position and bring 2 fingers to your chin. Pull the chin back from the fingers by pulling the head back. And bring the chin back to touching your fingers. Repeat 10 times. I'm turning a bit so you can see better what is going on. So fingers must not move, only my head is moving. And the movement is very small. And 2 times more. Now we are ready. Thanks. I hope you feel refreshed. Have a nice day. Bye.
Thank you, Kati. Now I would like to say that please be seated, but that sounds a little bit like an American law TV series. So please stay standing up or sit down, whatever you feel comfortable. Right now we can see Plans Ellis illustration about our webinar for the we just from our keynote speakers. And now we will continue to our panel discussion today. Our keynote speakers, Professor Weichold, Professor Bottini, and Associate Professor Muntele will be joined now by Mr. Ville Ritola, who is working as a specialist of social affairs at the Student Union of the University of Turku. In his work, Ville is in contact to action groups in his field and takes care of the distribution of information on current affairs in social policy. He helps students with many social matters, for example, livelihood and well-being. Ville is also one of the harassment contact persons in the student union. During the spring, I have worked very closely with Ville and other members of the student union with a common project of ours called Mielen päällä, on my mind in English. Ville will now tell us shortly about our project On My Mind, which has been funded by the Ministry of Education in Finland. Hello, Ville. I can see you.
Hello.
How are you doing?
All good. Quite excited
Welcome.
to be here and quite honored to be here among such distinguished guests. Maybe I could get used to it.
Of course you can.
Yeah.
So will you present yourself or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. So I'll share the screen just a bit. Yeah, let's see. Okay, now you should see my slideshow.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. And so, yeah, I'm here to present you briefly On My Mind project, which is a peer support model for mental health. And I have a few slides here, and if I understood right, I was given 5 long minutes, so
yes.
I'll try to keep in my time frame. So here is the actual logo of the On My Mind project and the idea, the power of peer support. I'd like to briefly talk about the background of the On My Mind project. As we heard during the speeches earlier, that mental health issues are widely known and recognized, and they've been widely recognized and discussed among university students in the University of Turku, also in the national level in Finland. The university has conducted several surveys, which also give us an idea what's going on in the minds of the students. And also there's a long-term survey which has been done ever since 2000 by Finnish student healthcare system. It's called as the Finnish Student Health and Wellbeing Survey that has been conducted every 4th year. So it gives us like really quite good idea of what's going on inside the students' minds, not only during the COVID pandemic. So On My Mind is a peer support model for mental health, and it was originally launched by the Association of Economic Students at the School of Economics in Turku. So it all began there were students who were figuring out what they actually could do about the mental health issues which are being discussed and recognized, but it was quite hard to really to do something about it. Of course, we as a student we want to have more services to support students with their mental well-being, but of course maybe we could ourselves do something. So the students in the School of Economics came out with an idea, and the project has been going on over there for 2 years, and now we are on stage where we want to expand the project to all faculties of University of Turku. So there are 7 more faculties which will adapt this peer-to-peer model. So as Tiia mentioned, we have a funding from the Ministry of Education. We have now hired 2 project workers who I will present you in the last slide. And the main goals of these On My Mind projects are to, first of all, promote early support for mental well-being. Our university has quite wide early support services for students, which are not that widely known. At least they haven't been. Maybe nowadays they are. And also we have more structures outside of the university that support students, and we want to promote these services through our our On My Mind supporting students. Of course, we want to reduce the stigma and prejudice towards mental health issues. At least the stigma has been rather strong, at least in the past in Finland. And that's something we want to reduce. And we want to share good practices that support students' mental well-being. And well, those practices are still something that we will find out during this year and this project, but we have some ideas already. I'll skip this slide and maybe I could show you it in the coffee break, as there is too much information to go through right now. But what we are doing at the moment is that we are currently seeking for On My Mind supporting students who will work as peers and as students who are approachable for other students and whom with they could discuss about matters that are on their minds. We are aiming at a low threshold approach. So the idea is that to discuss about the issues on your mind and in your life before they actually become bigger and affect your ability to study, for example. So these supporting students and also staff members of the university will take part into Mental Health First Aid 2 course, which is a course that is about to give basic knowledge about mental health problems and also skills, how to support students and other people who are facing mental health problems. So that's the essential method and the basic training for students and staff in On My Mind project. We've also launched a mental health survey last week, and the aim is to review themes related to students' mental well-being. And sorry, I'm being too quick. The responses are utilized to promote students' resilience and well-being at the University of Turku. And also the survey is used as a meter to assess the impact of the project in future. So we can actually see that what we are doing now, does it have an effect in the future? The next steps in our project during the spring and summer is that we are about to give the staff the training, or not us, as the trainings are done through Mieli ry, which is a Finnish mental health organization that gives these trainings. We are also about to publish our website during the summer, and in the autumn, when the semester and the next academic year will begin, the supporting students will get their trainings, and then we will have the actual launch of the peer support model. And of course, there will be also the publication of the mental health survey report. And as I promised, here are the actual project workers who are working on this project. So there is Kaisa Aho, who is working at us at the student union TYY, or TY as we call it, and Heidi Vuoristo, who is working at this, it says student union, but it means at the university. Yeah, so that was the project really briefly described.
Thank
now
you.
I'll stop the share.
Yeah, thank you, Ville. So this is a very new project of ours, and the project worker Heidi Vuoristo is actually working in my team here at the university, and just yesterday we had a meeting of this project with Ville, so we meet basically every day online. Okay, so now we will move on to our panel discussion, but before that I will ask our support that was it until 2 o'clock? We have time. Okay, good to know. So now I would like to remind you that if you have any comments or questions to our panelists, please be active on our question and ask box or the chat box, and Lassi is there. And just Lassi, put your microphone on when there is some comments or questions that you want to bring into the conversation.
There's actually one question now, if you don't mind asking it.
Okay.
About the, yes, it is from Ville, actually. That's
okay,
why
let's start with that.
Yes. There was a question about if this is a temporary project or is it something you're planning to continue with?
Yeah, good question. Well, we got the funding for 1 year, but our aim is to adapt the system as a part of the university and also our student union normal basic routines. So we are expanding the model with the funding, and next year we'll see. Of course, we want that the project works in all the faculties after the funding.
We are aiming that this is going to be a permanent part of our jobs here at the university and the student union, so that even after the pandemic, we are able to support our students' mental health issues with our peer support model. Okay, let's start our panel discussion. First, I would like to hear from our panelists, Professor Weichold and Professor Bottini and Associate Professor Muntele, that do you have some comments about your, after hearing each other's presentations? And then I have a few questions for all of you. Who would like to start?
Well, if you like to start.
Please, Gabriella.
We have many things. Yes, we have many. Oh, sorry. We have many things in common by starting from these concerning the pandemics. I was very much interested about, the general problem of the academy to try to keep in touch, to stay in touch with the students and also the territory, even during the period of pandemics. And then something which is more related to the scientific studies concerning the follow-up of patients who were admitted to the hospitals. And, we just starting working on this, because I do agree with my colleagues that we have to work, especially along longitudinal studies. And I was writing to the panelists who pick up this point that, for example, we are to our hospital, speaking of almost 1,000 patients admitted for COVID. And we had already data coming, clinical data, and in particular neuropsychological data concerning 300 patients. We are writing the paper now. And what we are observing is that all these patients have different kind of cognitive and emotional problems, even if they were not damaged directly to the brain by the COVID, okay? So the general clinical situation and infection induces a particular damage to the brain activity anyway. And this is something which is extremely important. And thank you, of course, to everybody. And I learned a lot of things of other university, and I will be pleased to keep in touch.
Thank you, Professor Bottini. So I have the same question for Professor Weichhold and Associate Professor Muntele, that do you have comments on each other presentations?
So I would have a comment, and so first of all, thanks to the interesting presentations from my other colleagues. And of course, since I'm working quite some time in the field of intervention, I think I just wanted to make a plea for evaluation. I think we did not talk so much about it until this point in time, because I saw so interesting and so stimulating initiatives going on at the different universities. And let's stay, for instance, with the last example from Finland. I saw you thought about something like an evaluation. So to see whether the new introduced structures and the new program is really, you know, having some effect. But we have to think about also having pre-test data, because of course, because of the pandemic, we relatively quickly reacted and implemented certain measures because we had to do something that was a specific need we had to take into account, and maybe we forgot about doing a pre-test to see then how our program actually is affecting mental health. But as I said, we reacted fast and did something. But I wanted to make the plea that also because we think about sustainable programs, sustainable measures to promote positive development, we always need data, and we need some kind of options to prove actually that we did the right thing, to also get money to implement our strategies over a longer time. So although it's not the thing you think about first when you want to promote positive developmental pathways, it's something you definitely have to take into account. And in particular on a university level, this is important too, but also on the level of smaller kind of programs, sometimes it's just forgotten. In this particular situation, everyone would excuse, but if we think at long term, then we should keep it in mind and apply everything we know about evaluation also for our current situation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Weichhold. I would like to ask you to keep your camera open, and also the other panelists, if your cameras are not open, please open them so we can see all of you all together, at least on our screens. Okay, so now I will turn to Associate Professor Muntele. What kind of thoughts you came to mind after hearing your colleagues from Italy and Germany, and now our social affairs specialist from our student union from Finland?
Well, thank you. As I said at the beginning of my presentation, I feel honored to be here, and I find very interesting to feel in touch with you. Very good information, and I agree that we have to involve our activity in a more rigorous evaluation program. I mean, to see from where we start and where we arrive at the end. And we have in mind this is a very good point. I was also glad when I saw in a sort of prevention measure list of Professor Weichold the idea of prevention and counseling at low level, because it is a kind of emergency measure when we travel when we are in this situation. We can also use a peer support model like Yli-Muilu told about us, and also to use students' ability if they are psychology students in this level of master, of course. I'm interested where Yli-Muilu told they will publish the mental health report. I'm not sure I understood this, and I'm very curious to understand. Probably you have special publication which are in the clause of health ministry, or how do you publish this kind of report?
Ville.
Yes, thank you for your question. There will be a report made on the basis of the survey. Of course, I can't speak on behalf of Heidi and Kaisa that how they will actually publish it, but at least I suppose it will be published on the website of the project, On My Mind project. The website will be launched later on during the summer, but at least that's a place where you can find it in the future.
Well, I was just wondering, because I know Finland is famous for implementing science in educational politics, in health politics very, very quickly and very well. And I admire this very much. Actually, I admire both and all of countries which are here represented, and I like very much to hear your presentation, and hope to be able to meet again in this project. Thank you very much.
As I said, I'm also working with this on my mind project, and we were a little bit worried about that our students going to answer to our survey in this project, because there has been quite a lot of surveys concerning mental health or health issues altogether. How do we feel about working during the pandemic or studying during the pandemic? Almost every week we get email from some research institution or some who want to make a survey and research our feelings and emotions and our health. But I have to say that I believe that this pandemic, even though it takes us into isolation and a little bit further from each other, it in some way it also brings us together to this common problem of ours, and our students have been very active to answer to our survey. Just in 1 week we already have over 500 answers there, and we are still going on for 2 weeks, I believe. They have time, so and especially this time of year when our students are already leaving the university for their summer jobs and other summer activities. So I believe that our students find this issue very important, and I'm very glad that they are taking the time to answer also our survey, even though there has been many. And I also have a question about this theme to all of you, because if I understood correctly, you haven't been, at least all of you haven't been able to return to campus physically during this pandemic, that we are studying and teaching and working basically quite much remotely from our homes or being alone in our offices without our colleagues and co-workers. But if we take a little glimpse to future, which I hope is just around the corner. So what do you think that we should take into a very specific consideration when we return to normal life, normal as it can be, when this pandemic situation is going slowly away or just getting a bit easier, and especially from a well-being and a social connections point of view. For example, I will give you an example from Finland, because I know that our first year students that started their studies in the autumn 2020, they haven't studied at our campus at all, or they have been here just for a week or two. And that's why they don't know their peers. They don't know their teachers very well. They are just faces on their computer, or just a name on the computer, the peers. They're not even using the cameras, and they don't know the campus also. They don't know where is the library or where is the health services, for example. So and now we are planning, right now we are planning social programs and reintroduction weeks to our first year students that are going to be the second year students next autumn, but they are almost like first year students in many ways. And so this is something that we are right now working with. So I would like to hear from your countries, your universities, that what do you think that you should take into consideration when we are returning to campuses as normal as possible? Would you like to start, Professor Weichhold?
I think, yes, I think definitely these are good ideas to introduce the students when they come back on campus to real life on campus. But I think also that they relatively quickly get back to normal life. And if you try to think about what I said in the introduction of my talk, I mean, there is in this life phase for the majority, and as a normative tendency, the drive to explore and to find and to look around. And I think our students will really enjoy their life when they have the options to get back to normal. Definitely, I would not say that that most of them are now used to a remote learning situation and want to stay there. What I experience, or when I interact with my students via Zoom, I just did yesterday, and I asked them also about, I'm asking them always how they feel and how the situation is. I think they're just looking forward to it, and then it will explode. Yeah? Whatever effects this may have, not only on a positive, but maybe also on a negative side, is now not our topic, but as soon as we have the options to get together at the university, it relatively quickly, from my point of view, will be normal as it can be normal again for most of them. Of course, you will have a smaller share of young people that had really severe problems, that developed an anxiety disorder, for instance, or developed a severe depression. Of course, they cannot come from one to the other day to campus and everything is fine, and they can easily adapt to the new situation. They first need, of course, a proper treatment, but I assume it's a relatively small share as compared to the large group. But the small share of students definitely need intensive kind of attention and treatment to prevent them for longer problems to go through their educational career.
Thank you. Who would like to continue?
Well, okay. Just a few words. I think that, the key word after the pandemic, although, I'm a doctor, I am a neurologist, we are still in the pandemic. I'm also working in a hospital. And of course, the story is still there with differences, of course. But I think the right word, the key word is sustainability. Because I think that we need to learn something from these pandemics, which is not negative, this something we are learning. But I don't want to say simply, easily, we are going back to the situation before, because I don't think that this would be possible. Because we were most of the old people said in Italy, and I guess everywhere, like a war. Okay, well, there are differences, of course, but coming out from this kind of historical situation, I don't think can leave us exactly the same as before. And I think that, for example, there were very important things, such as, for example, learning a new way to communicate remotely, okay? And the creation of a new language that in any way worked with many difficulties. And in particular, I have to say that the students of my academy, but also of other universities in Milan, and we are keeping in touch with those universities, are able to create with empathic notes and features that weren't present before. And this is very interesting by the scientific point of view in neuropsychology and psychology, because the young people in particular were able to create this new form of languages and also able to create empathic networks. We had a very high number of dead people, especially in Pavia, because Pavia was the starting of everything. So we have many families of students that were, really hearted by the COVID. I have students that lost both the parents, for example, or, other relatives. And of course, we have to make a story on this. And academy, and we have scientific and humanistic studies, we have to elaborate this and create a new form of culture. And I suspect also a new form of respect of, a sustainable world. Because I think that this happens also because we do not have probably enough respect for this, and young people know this very well. So I am optimistic. I think that this pandemic that was a tragedy, that is a tragedy, also taught us something. And I'm very happy that young people are able to grasp this and create a new culture in new models.
Thank you, Professor Bottini. You're absolutely on the spot. Very
Well,
important. Associate Professor Muntele, please.
well, thank you. When you ask us about what can I keep with us after this pandemic will stop, I thought about some good thing that I remarked during this more than 1 year of academic activity. For example, we have a lot of students who were much more able to participate in activities when they are in this format online than if it was on physical presence in the amphitheater or inside of the university. For some month, I keep on asking them if we were not online now, but if we were in the amphitheater, in the university, you would be here or not. And I made some statistical results then, and a lot of them would not be able to be present. So I think we can keep this mixed activity, being both in physical presence and being also available online during our courses, seminars, and so on. I think this could be, maybe it's easy in other countries, but in our country, this could be a matter of an effort to improve the infrastructure in schools and in university. And another good thing, it is connected to this idea of increasing connection between students and professor, with increasing empathy and compassionate dialogue. I remarked a lot of change in this direction. And for example, a lot of students who usually were shy or not very much involved in this online activity became more able to be active and to be involved. It's not general, but there is a small part of the students who are a kind of beneficiary of this situation. I think about this like a good point. Anyway, it is nice to think about what is good in this pandemic, and it is hopefully we are able to think about good points and to keep our optimism and to identify ways to preserve what was really good. In my country, I think after this pandemic, people should think very seriously about scientific education. I don't know if it is available only in my country, probably not. But I see in Romania that we have a kind of problem with trust in science. People move quickly from trust to distrust, and this is not good. I mean, anti-vaccination attitude and so on. and probably in university we should be more aware of making a good education in this direction in order to prevent a kind of receptivity to unscientific messages, which are very many in social media.
Thank you. Ville, would you like to add something at this point?
Well, while listening to Professor Weichold's presentation, I just realized, okay, the word we need for our On My Mind project and of course the reorientation is the empathy. That's actually like one of the main ideas. I hadn't even realized that's what's actually what peer supporting students do. They promote empathy on somehow an organized level.
Indeed. I believe there isn't never enough empathy in this world. Lassi, I can see that there is something going on in our chat box and also in our question and ask box. Will you tell us more?
Sure. There's one question in our Q&A box that I could perhaps raise. You have shown that support to students and staff is crucial, but we must acknowledge also that our staff and students have been very helpful to people and society, in particular students from the medical field. Do you have such wonderful examples? This was not directed at anyone in particular, so perhaps anybody who wishes can have any examples of this.
I mean, yes, for example, in our university, we have had this kind of collaboration by, the old students. Let's say that, for example, students that are not studying medicine, they were very good on the territory. For example, in the supermarkets by preparing stuff and then at the old people, and then, for example, bringing food to the old people that were close at home. And this is one of the examples. And we had a very open, but still, and of course the vaccine, wonderful, is going on. But and then students in the medical field, they were very good, participating, for example, the experiments on the vaccine, and we had a very active lab in Pavia, and which is a particular specialization. And I have to say, all of us, I am a neurologist, but I'm working volunteering on Saturday and Sunday, which is quite hard, but I have, for the first time in my life, to do something which is really concrete and useful. We are in the staff of in the medical staff for vaccination, which is important, of course, because you have to collect anamnestic, news, and also you should have not always coherent. We know this. It's not a problem. It's the real, stuff that happens in the scientific field. And I think that having, medical staff discussing this with people who need vaccine, it's a good thing.
Thank you. Lassi, would you tell us a little bit about what's going on in the chat box? Is there some topics or comments that would...
Yes, I could perhaps take the latest comment there, or what was the latest, but now let's see. From Adriana, I think that the social sustainability after the pandemic would require a large interdisciplinary collaboration. Sociologists, psychologists, architects, decision people, etc. For example, for redesigning public spaces, both inside and outside, including at the university, keeping the good parts of the virtual/online experiences, etc. Rethinking the individual and community well-being. If any of our panelists have anything to comment on this.
you like to comment on this, Adriana's comment?
I would say that this is definitely how it should be. Yeah, and it would be a nice vision if this would actually happen. If we all take the experiences and try to restructure education spaces, community, culture, and so on, and try to, profit from it. But I don't want to see it, I don't want to frame it so negatively, but I hope this can happen in the future. Yeah, but I don't know if the investment is really so directed in the long term, or has such a long term perspective. I'm curious to see what happened and what will happen, and I would love to participate in such interdisciplinary activities. I think they are really important, and there is many research going on already in the psychological field, but also in many other fields. And we could definitely do something and taking it out of it positively. But I'm curious, as I said, I would say definitely yes, but we will see.
Thank you. Now I'm looking at the time, and I'm so sorry that I have to say that to this point that thank you for this very interesting discussion. Our time has almost run out, but we can continue discussions in the coffee rooms. So now we have an opportunity to make our own voices heard in the coffee rooms. So please join us to the thematic coffee rooms at the Live2 platform, the same place where you first came and found this Zoom link to this webinar and panel. There we have several coffee rooms, each having a host. I'm one of them, with interesting themes. For example, there you can get acquainted with the Science Battle or My Mobile Tutor application and meet our student ambassadors. And then if you just want to relax, go to our Zen room, which sounded very, very wonderful. And if you have your own idea to discuss about, you can invite others to the Live2 platform chat to join you with in this additional virtual room. The coffee rooms are open for 1 hour, and you may stay there the whole time, or just pop in, pop out, whatever suits you best. And also you may visit several rooms during this coffee break. Once again, thank you for all our keynote speakers and panelists and all our participants all over Europe. I hope to see you in the coffee rooms, and hopefully see you soon live, at least at the next forum. Thank you very much, and take care of yourselves.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye. Thank you.
Goodbye.
Coffee break room.